When I started Childline and a donor told me you have to do this or we're withdrawing funding, I said, withdraw the funding. I'm not going to go away from what I want. And I've done this repeatedly with donors. It's not the first time. Anytime someone says, we want you to do it A, no, if it doesn't agree with how we see it and the community sees it, we won't do it.
We can't fix the world alone, but collaborating isn't easy and systems are allergic to change. So how do we do it without losing our damn minds?
That is what we're here to find out.
I'm Jeff Walker.
I'm English Saul. Welcome to System Catalyst, the podcast that cracks the code for making the world a better place.
Hi, everyone. Today, we've got an absolute legend in system change on the show. Seriously, she's been doing this work long before I even knew what system change was. And yet, the way she defines it is surprisingly simple: working together to solve an issue. Her belief in collaboration has been the core of everything she's built. Over the years, Jeroo has founded multiple nonprofit organizations, partnering with people from all over the world. Her latest venture, Catalyst 2030, a global movement of social entrepreneurs and innovators that's making waves in just 4 short years. Catalyst 2030 uses an approach English and I like to call locally driven, network-supported system change. In other words, they share knowledge and resources, but let each community decide what works best for them. Today, Jeroo's here to share her wisdom on building movements like this. We'll dive into why starting with values instead of goals is key, and how listening can take you further than you might think. She also gives her take on how donors can really engage if they want to support this kind of work. Oh, and at the end, we even talk about spirituality and how it influences the work we do. I learned so much from this conversation, and I know you will too. Let's dive in. I've been watching some of your TED Talks and interviews, and you say that you enjoy the startup aspects of it all and growing the idea and the enterprise itself. Now, a lot of people in the early days would say, therefore, I'm going to set up a direct service enterprise. I'm going to have a great idea and it'll just scale. You didn't take that route. You started looking at building collaboratives. How did you decide that direction?
I think that was part of my socialization again. My early orientation was in the slums. Then when I went to study in New York, I worked with homeless men. And then when I came back, I worked with street kids. So I think collaboratives for me was a product of my working on the streets, in the slums. And then I took a gap year and I took a train and traveled through rural India. So I think it was really learning from the communities. And what I saw was the strong sense of, by and large, helping people, And I think for me, it was always the collaboration. There's a boy alone on the streets and there's a poor family and they would still feed you. So I learned the fact that there is a lot of interconnectedness and sharing. And if one had to do anything, one could only do it through interconnectedness and sharing. And therefore, when I started, I think my first big project, which was Childline, I was very clear that it had to be done in the spirit of the street, which was the spirit of collaboration and sharing. I would give full credit for everything to my learnings from the streets and the communities.
For a bit more context on Childline, it all started when Jeroo gave her personal number to street kids in India so that they could reach her whenever they needed help. Her phone never stopped ringing. Realizing the immense need, she launched the Childline India Foundation in 1996, a 24/7 emergency helpline for children in crisis. True to her collaboration mindset, she later brought together 49 child helplines from around the world to create Child Helpline International. I think I saw, you correct me if I'm wrong, you have 5,000 organizations that were part of Childline India, right?
At a stage more, yeah.
That's a leap in thought that a lot of people would be afraid to make, and that you did. So that kind of large scale collaboration is pretty gutsy.
Yeah, but if you believe in the goodness of humanity, then you believe in collaboration. I don't think there's anything else to it.
Mm-hmm.
When we started Catalyst, first of all, everyone thought we would fail because they said social entrepreneurs won't collaborate.
Mm.
And I said, there's one thing I'm sure about is that we as social entrepreneurs will collaborate. And well, we have. And Catalyst is living proof of collaborations. I think we have 3,500 plus organizations, 5,000 plus individuals. And these are networks who have larger networks. So it's a huge moment of collaboration. And it really starts from a belief in goodness of humankind and the need to collaborate. And then over the years, I have developed this model of what I call collaborative systems change, which to me is really important because everyone talks about targets and I start my work with principles.
Mm.
What will be the 2 or 3 unifying values, but 2 or 3 unifying principles in day-to-day operation? And that's where the skill comes in.
And some examples of those principles?
So with Childline, there was actually only one principle, and that was we'll do whatever it takes to listen to and fulfill the needs of children. So our principle was listening to children. And we connected every single service. So the whole network was set up on children need healthcare services. That's what we heard from them. They need protection from the police. Then we got child labor calls. We need child labor. They need sponsorship. So the central principle in Childline was listening to children. When I went to set up Child Helpline International, the members were countries wanting to set up helplines in developing countries. So then it became listening to what are the networks who are working with children saying and developing that. So then the principle for child helplines became connecting to children. And that became actually also our key publication because we started connecting the connectors to children. So that became the principle in Child Helpline International. And then in Aflatun, the principle was a lot of celebration because we had children, we were teaching them about money, we were teaching them about life skills. And so there was the unifying principle of the character Aflatun, which was bringing social and financial education to children. And then the last in Catalyst, well, there are 7 principles, but I say there are 2 which are the most important, which is convening and connecting. And doing convening as an honest broker, because to build trust, you need to be an honest broker. And there's a saying which I learned also, you need 5 fingers for your hands, right? And all 5 fingers are different, but you need all 5. Similarly, whatever you do, the need for collaboration is like your hand. You need all the 5 fingers to achieve the best possible result.
Can you talk about your view on how donors ought to be involved in these kinds of efforts and system change efforts? There's been a number of different donor collaboratives that have come together, but in my fear, the donors are too directive.
Well, honestly, if donors really want to work on systems change, they need to stop telling people, I want this number of children and that number of children.
Yep.
And they need to shift their mindset away from a target-oriented mindset to a principles-oriented mindset. B, they have to accept that you'll take 4 steps forward and 20 steps backward until you reach an inflection point for change. Systems change is hard. And C, I think they need to realize that 90% of systems change is relational. Instead, in Catalyst, one of the main things when we did our 3-year impact, I said, if you have to look at when we take off, we need to look at our relational arc. And there's a relational arc which leads to an inflection point, which leads to change. And that's the same for all systems change, and donors don't recognize that part of it. So I think donors have to move to messy rather than cut and dry and easy.
And how I kind of like to look at it is they need to be partners in the process, not directing. And they're going to learn as much as anybody in the process.
Yes. I have been very blessed with the donors I've had. And the donors who have been partners in the process are the ones who've made things happen. So I don't think Child and Youth Finance International or Aflatun in the early stages would have taken off if we didn't have the support of MasterCard Foundation.
Right.
Because MasterCard Foundation really was like, okay, we have these limitations because, the government places them, but within that, we are willing to let you explore. And for that matter, in Catalyst, I really want to compliment Don.
Here, Jeroo is talking about Don Gibbs, the CEO of the Skoll Foundation. The foundation's a name you might be familiar with because of all the incredible work they do in philanthropy and social impact. We'll have Don on the show in an upcoming episode, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that conversation.
I remember meeting Don and saying, Don, I want to do this. We may probably fail, or we most probably will fail because that's what all of you say we'll do. But please trust us and let us go ahead and do it our way and write a check. And Skoll did that. And MasterCard Foundation matched them. And if we didn't have Skoll and MasterCard Foundation as being the initial believers in Catalyst, we would not be where we are today.
And I think that's all the difference, right? There's some donors out there that still take the old way. And I think Don and Rita are willing to get a little involved and messy. And I think you're right. That's a high leverage result.
Exactly. And something, if you look at, everyone says you have to compare with the private sector. And the private sector has results. But why are people not looking at that when a VC invests? They know that they're going to have many, many failures and then they'll have this one success. But in the social sector, no one's willing to give that breathing for people to fail. And that means that you are constantly in a scarcity and a fear mindset. I think if someone asked me why I can scale, because I'm like, I don't give a damn. I'm going to do what I want.
Right.
And I've been very blessed all my life with the donors. But when I started Childline and a donor told me you have to do this or we're withdrawing funding, I said, withdraw the funding. I'm not going to go away from what I want. And I've done this repeatedly with donors. It's not the first time. Anytime someone says we want you to do it A, no, if it doesn't agree with how we see it and the community sees it, we won't do it.
Right.
So I think it's also donors create a mindset of fear in innovators, which is crippling the sector.
Well, let's hope that's changing.
I hope so. And they'll probably stop funding me after that. Or even if they think of, they'll say, oh, she's too critical. We are not touching this lady.
So if you could change one thing that donors do, what would it be?
You want me to pick only one?
Well, you can have a couple if you'd like.
No, I think I would say trust. I don't think donors really trust their partners.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say trust and partner.
Right. Be a partner.
Because if your donor is your true partner, they are like wind beneath your sails.
Mm-hmm.
They can really, really, really help. I was having a problem last month when I transitioned from Childline and I wasn't sure what to do. And I picked up the phone to Rita and I said, Rita, I really want your advice. And she gave me some of the best advice. And I think that's it. You should be able to reach out to your donors and ask them for that advice. They should be your partners. If you screw up, which you do always, I do. I don't know about others. Then you can tell them, hey, I messed up. What do I do? And then let them trust you and partner with you.
I love that. A walls down collaboration between donors and doers.
See, you put it so articulately to my long-winded thing.
Well, that's what we hope for. I mean, maybe you can give us your definition of system change and kind of how you're kind of thinking about it.
If I have to give my definition of systems change, it is working together to solve a problem or an issue. Just very simple. If we want to bring about true systems change, you have to work together with policymakers, with business, with the community, with everybody. And only then are you able to solve the problem that you really want. And while you're solving the problem, your behavior changes. Don't make it complex. I love the KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. That's why I say working together to solve the problem. And when you do that, you yourself will change your behavior. With every one of my organizations, I have learned, grown, and evolved.
Yeah, which is awesome because the people doing this work that are listening to this podcast, they're looking for role models and saying, what do I need to do? And I think your message is you'll learn, you'll evolve, continue to grow depending on what you're trying to go after, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And as long as you remember that you're one in, I think it's 8 billion people in the world, 10 billion, you're one in several billion. So don't take yourself too seriously and party away.
Well, you mentioned the words honest broker. And, to me, that means a couple different things, but maybe you can just let us know what kind of skills you need to be an honest broker.
To me, it's deep listening. Again, I will give a straight euphemism. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So listen more than you talk. The first most important thing is really deep listening and not listening to what is said, but listening to what is not said. That's more important. 2, convening people regardless of what your personal opinion is, and always convening diverse stakeholders. And 3, never ever trying to impose your opinion, even if asked. I just say it's very simple. It's just these 3 things for me.
And I particularly like the last one, and then that you're here as a questioner and aren't coming in with the answer.
Yeah. And there's no right answer to any problem. A lot of our education and a lot of our society worships the hero. And if you're very good at self-marketing, self-promotion, self-awards, that's what we recognize. And society is geared towards thinking that way. But the truth of the matter is that if we want to bring about change, the individual can't bring about the change. It has to be done through the collective. That's why I keep talking about collaborative systems change. Otherwise, even in systems change, there's so much of the I and not the we.
Yeah, it's important. You helped start up the Catalyst 2030, and that was a lot of organizations supporting you in that. And now you said 3,000 plus collaboratives that are part of it. Can you give us a couple of examples of how 2030 works? The kind of collaboratives that have come together, maybe give us 1 or 2.
Sure. So first to start with, as of last month, I transitioned out of Catalyst 2030. I'd like to be clear on that because my role is over, because we had a target of 75 countries. We reached that 6 months ahead of schedule. So I thought my job was done to be able to do it. So the first example is, as I said, people didn't believe Catalyst would be able to. We said, let's give ourselves 3 years to establish country chapters in 75 countries. And those country chapters will define for themselves what they want to do. So different country chapters got together and they did different things. And in Africa, I think this is where I love, is in Africa, our entrepreneurs realize that the aid which goes to Africa is not really managed by Africans. All of it, most of the heads of NGOs in Africa are non-Africans.
Right.
So they got together to create Africa Forward to A, shed more light on that issue, B, to start training people so that they could get into leadership positions much more in Africa, and C, to start creating a strong social sector in Africa. And today, Catalyst is one of the only places which is working in every country of Africa and doing different things with different countries and different partners. Or we look at the climate, because that we had a climate collaborative where we realized that voices from the global south were not really being heard. So we started something called Catalyst for Climate. And in Catalyst for Climate, we basically spoke to the government, the champions of the COP. And we said, there's no voice of local community people over here. There's no voice of proximate leaders. How are you going to bring about change? They are the ones most affected by climate change. So last year in COP, more proximate leaders were there. And this year, we are actually working with the Champions Office to make sure that in every session, proximate voices give the perspectives from the field and the communities. And by doing that, we're influencing the whole climate debate from a different way. And this is all done through our members. And we have 125 such collaboratives. So you can imagine the change which is coming. It's a really small secretariat. So we are totally member driven. And I always say Catalyst is the best return on investment because each member puts in approximately 20 hours at the minimum a year, minimum. So you're just looking at 20x return in terms of your investment or your euro spend because we spend around that much per member. So it's really a high return and a lot of impact and change taking place.
Each of the ideas comes from the local countries and country levels.
They come from the countries, the local entrepreneurs. You have an issue, the secretariat facilitates to make it happen. And the way we do it is we have very systematic onboarding. We didn't start that way. We grew to having that. We have sessions where people, if they have an idea, they can share and people join. We have a monthly general assembly where people can shout out for something that they want. And then we have country assemblies at the country level, at the regional level. So this whole ecosystem providing an honest broker connection platform. And people start collaborating from that.
And these convenings are virtual usually?
Yeah, we don't have the money for in person.
Hey.
Sorry, no.
Yeah.
And Catalyst really took off in COVID, and ideologically, we just try to keep it virtual. So most of the time, even without camera, because bandwidth is crap.
Next, Jeroo turned the tables on me and asked me to share more about my background. This led us to talk about the role of spirituality in each of our lives.
Why don't you tell me about yourself?
I've been doing this, I was vice chairman JP Morgan and ran their private equity for 25 years. And then in 2007 said I need to work in the world of philanthropy and social change. And so I've been working ever since.
But what made you get about that shift?
I got tired of doing deals and I was doing about 10 or 15% of my time in the nonprofit world. And when I got a little burned out, I said, what will give me more energy? And it was working for others. It was a spiritual practice as well. I'm a deeply spiritual driven person and thinking about compassion for others.
Spirituality plays a big way in many, many things, Jeff. Spirituality is very much behind my work.
I am curious about that because it drives me so much. How does it drive you? I mean, how are you thinking about it?
So for me, spirituality is really important. Firstly, in my house, there are 3 religions. My husband's Catholic, my children who are adopted are Hindu, and I'm a Zoroastrian. So we learn from all the different faiths which are there. I was brought up in Zoroastrianism, which says the only important thing is good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And I think that is my guiding principle in everything. And then from Hinduism, it's karma and dharma, do your duty and leave the rest to God. And I think these 2 things really, really make a big difference. And from Christianity, I've always said if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn the other. So these 3 faiths, which are part of my house, are also part of my philosophy and my everyday. That just leads to being happy,
I love that. And I'm drawn to people that probably are also in a similar mindset.
Yeah.
Compassion for others and taking action to lower suffering and enhancing joy.
Yes, definitely. That's just the good deeds in 2 words.
Well, it's figuring out these system change strategies and the way people can come together. And I find the more people do it, the more they'll do more of it because it's just too fun.
Exactly.
If there's a message or 2 you'd give to people listening who want to continue to follow down similar paths, what would you say?
Don't take yourself too seriously. You're one among several billion trying to change the world. That's the first thing. Because if you take yourself too seriously at some stage, you tend to burn out. So do your best and leave the rest to the cosmic path that has to happen. That's my first message. And second is just be happy. find joy. I'm talking to you and I'm looking at the roses in my garden.
Nice.
Find that small thing which will give you joy every day.
Love that.
And always create this balance. I think find time. When I was working with Childline and it was virtually 20-hour work days, my friends would drag me out for 2 hours and say, you have to have dinner. You don't sleep, it's fine, but you're going to have dinner with us and celebrate. So I think keeping that balance and having that support system which keeps that balance, create it and keep it. I think that would be my second message. Don't take yourself too seriously. Find happiness in everything you do and find an ecosystem which will give you balance. It can be friends, it can be family, it can be church, it can be, I don't know, whatever. Just find that.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you. If there's anything I've missed or you want to add, feel free.
No, you have been fantastic. And it was been really nice talking to you and chatting. And I hope we stay connected.
We will. We're hopefully going down the same path in some shape or form, looking for these partnerships and collaborations. So that's what I love. So thank you for doing what you do. That's it for today's show. Please don't forget to subscribe to System Catalyst so you don't miss out on the new episodes. Also, do us a huge favor by rating our podcast and leaving us a review. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. Before we go, I'd like to thank our producers at Hueman Group Media. We'd also like to thank our incredible network of partners who are supporting our mission: the Skoll Foundation, the Aspen Institute's Aspen Global Leadership Network, Echoing Green, DRK Foundation, Maverick Collective, Virgin Unite, Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project, Boldly Go Philanthropy, Synergos, Forward Global, Nexus, and New Profit. If you're interested in becoming a System Catalyst and would like to learn more about our partners, please visit systemcatalyst.com.